Hello, and you are very welcome back to the Public Eye Business Podcast, brought to you by Granite Exchange. I'm your host, Sarah Travers, and throughout the series I'm speaking with local entrepreneurs and business owners to learn more about how their companies have come to be, to gain insight into their growth and find out how they continue to innovate. So wherever you get your podcasts from, remember to keep an eye out for all new episodes and subscribe to stay up to date. So today in the studio, I'm joined by Nicola McGuinness, owner of Nicola McGuinness Coaching. Nicola, I am genuinely so pleased to have you in the podcast studio today. You're very welcome.
Oh my goodness, no pressure.
No pressure, but I love what you do and I can't wait to get stuck into the conversation. But before we begin, a little bit of background into Nicola and her business. So, Nicola is a sought-after career and confidence coach whose mission is to empower women to live an inspired life and love what they do. Nicola helps women who struggle with low self-belief to discover their true potential. She helps them transform from the inside out by rediscovering themselves, developing their confidence, belief in their abilities, and getting clarity on what they want in life, then taking action to make it happen. Her clients range from CEOs to those mid-career, female business owners, women returners, and women who want a total career change. Nicola is the founder and leader of the Lean In Newry network that has almost 450 members. As a Lean In regional leader, Nicola and her team support their members to achieve their ambitions and work to create a more equal world. She has 20 plus years of experience in project management and business and economic development before she trained as a coach and set up her own coaching business. So Nicola, as I said, I'm really pleased to talk to you because I'm very interested in coaching myself. But I think just from your story, we can learn so much about setting up a business and how life can lead you on a journey that perhaps you didn't set out on, but you end up somewhere else. And I think that's very true with you.
Unbelievably so. Sarah, you've really hit the nail on the head in the way that my life has transformed. And I find very much with the women that I work with and people in general that we foreclose on who we are very early on in life, and we decide who we are, and that's just who I am, and I can't be anything else. And that was part of my story, you know. I had lived in New York for a while after university, then came home to get married, as many people did 20 odd years ago, and settled then into a public sector role and stayed there for 20 years. And you know, at that stage, I was getting the rumblings of, gosh, I don't want to get stuck here. Or I was feeling really stuck. But what else could I do? Because in my mind, I had already decided I'm a public sector worker, full stop, end of. And it's so hard to envision yourself as anything else because you just see yourself as you are presently, and we don't have the techniques or the tools to keep that visioning going to see who are you. You just tell yourself stories all the time. You know, I'm not that type of person. I could never do that. That's not something I'm good at. Are you joking? That's you don't even know me. How could you think I could be this, that and the other? And so I was very much close-minded into what I could do, and also I didn't have the self-confidence to make that change, and that's what I see in the clients that I have. So yes, I've learned over the last couple of years to never say never.
So you worked in the public sector. Did you work in the one job or did you move around?
So I was a long time in an operational front, so working with companies face-to-face and delivering the programmes. And then in an effort to, I suppose, grow within my own career, I took an opportunity in the research side of it. And looking back now, I know that, you know, there's never a wrong move really, because we always learn from things that we do. However, it was very much unsuited to my values, and that then played out in that whole feeling of being stuck and unfulfilled and unhappy. And on the outside, people could see that I had a really good job, close to home, flexible, pensionable, steady, all those things.
Perfect life.
Perfect life, yes.
Why would she go and change that?
Exactly. And you know, we're all taught to be thankful for what you have, and sure, what have you got to complain about? But inside, I was just so unfulfilled. I had this feeling that, is this the end of my career? You know, the biggest thing was I don't want to have this looking back on my retirement and thinking, you know, Nicola, 20 years ago you had an opportunity to do something, you just didn't. And, you know, also we have learned to accept mediocrity and being average and accepting what we have, because there's so many people out there much less off.
And where does that come from, Nicola? Is that our society?
I
or
do
is that
believe.
us?
I believe, well, it's a mixture of both, Sarah. Definitely our society, in terms of, you know, if you're not in pain, then just get on with it.
Right,
And
okay.
so the pain, I was in pain.
Stop complaining.
Yeah, stop complaining. But people from the outside, you know, even when I spoke to my husband about it, he was like, what? Why would you want to leave your job? He couldn't understand it. And I was like, just feel so unfulfilled, like there's a life not lived yet. However, at the same time, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know what change I wanted to make.
Right,
and I
so
didn't
that's
have-
massive. So I was going to ask you then, so why coaching, or how did that come about? But you just had this burning sense of, I'm not supposed to be here anymore
Yeah.
in this particular job. I need to do something else. What did you do?
I was very lucky. I obviously went out searching for fulfillment, because I knew no one was going to come to me and say, here, there's your silver platter with your wonderful job on it. And I did a master's, and that didn't satisfy the craving.
Okay.
And I then went on a course called Grit and Grace through Women in Business, and it really opened my mind to this idea about gender inequality and the differences between men and women and their leadership styles. That was a new concept to me, but it kind of lit something in me that day that I didn't even know.
So talk to me a little bit about that, because there'll be many people listening to this now going, that's me, I'm listening to my life. Talk to me about Grit and Grace.
So that was a course that was for females only. And for me, walking into a room with only women and realising that every other woman in that room felt the same way. It was the first time I'd heard the phrase imposter syndrome. The phrase lean in was mentioned to me at that stage. I'd never heard of that before either. And I remember distinctly walking out of the room that day and feeling like I could take on the world, because those women were in that room to support each other. And I knew that we were all feeling the same way. I wasn't the only person feeling that way about my career. And I just thought, wow, this is a whole new take on life, to have people that are supporting you. And also, again, it lit up that fire around gender equality, which I'm very passionate about too. And that, I suppose, the rose-coloured glasses came off that day.
So back in the day job, did you feel that you weren't equal?
I never had that feeling of equality in my role, no. I never saw the inequalities in the world until that day, and I'm actually embarrassed to even say that. I thought, you know, I had a great life. I had no real challenges or issues, and so I had nothing to complain about in my day job. It wasn't about that. It was more about the society around me, and it was so funny because the whole journey home, I could spot it. I was looking at billboards that had all men on them. I remember going to my mum's later on that evening, and the news was on, and it was about the World Economic Forum, and literally there was a stage full of about 40 women and 40 men and 2 women. And like I say, the rose-coloured glasses were gone, and I couldn't unsee the world how it is. And that just sparked a whole other area of interest to me, kind of an aside from the coaching story.
So you were literally drawn to the light, if you like. So what did you do then?
Yes, so I remember speaking with my manager at the time. She was a wonderful mentor to me in my job. And she said to me, you know, Nicola, you're going to have some sort of an output from this programme. And I was raving about Lean In at the time, and she said, why don't you start Lean In? And I did have that voice in my head telling me to do it.
So let's just explain Lean In for those who don't know. That's the movement, I suppose, started by Sheryl Sandberg.
That's
want to
right.
just tell us a bit about that?
So Sheryl was had a fairly high position in Google and then moved on to Facebook to be the CFO. But what she recognised was that the higher she rose up through the ranks of the I suppose, the C-suite, the less and less women were holding roles of influence and power, I suppose. And She did a TED Talk about it, which led her to then write a book, which then led to the establishment of circles. And the circles were her idea of getting women in a room, a small group of women in a room, to talk about their careers and keep women involved in their careers. Because very much we face, as females in the work environment, a lot of unconscious bias and inequality. And also we have within ourselves a lot of responsibilities, or we'll talk ourselves out of doing things because potentially we're getting married, we might have a child, or we'll wait until the child goes to primary school before I go for that role, and we hold ourselves back as well. And her idea, Cheryl's idea, was to keep women in the workforce in order to combat the gender equality, but also to thrive in their careers and reach their full potential. And the way to do that was to support each other through our careers by getting together in circles. And so I started a Lean In circle with lots of imposter syndrome. Who am I to do this? And then I just thought, well, you know what, who am I not to? And sure, it could be a bit of crack, just with a couple of girls.
And what was it like when you started it?
Oh my goodness, that first meeting, so nervous. Did a lot of prep. The Lean In is great. They have a lot of support for you. So here's your first meeting. You could talk about this. I had actually used a lot of the content from the Grit and Grace course, again, about the differences between men and women's brains and their leadership styles and things like that. And I had 5 colleagues, and that was in the June of 2018. And by the January of 2019, I met Sheryl Sandberg. I was in the room with her, having a chat with her, so that was phenomenal.
And what was she like?
She's tiny, but a force to be reckoned with. And I had this fear of, they say, never meet your idols or your heroes. And I thought, I don't want to be disappointed. She was phenomenal. And she walked into the room, kicked off her shoes, and stood there in her bare feet, eating like a bag of nuts and chatting to us as if you and I were just chatting now.
And this was like, here is my leader. Obviously, she herself has been through incredible challenges in her own life. And when she started Lean In, she was a very different person than she perhaps evolved into, like we all do in our life journeys. But she lost her husband very tragically, and she was dealing with grief. Have you seen her since? Have
I seen her? Yes. Well, actually, I haven't seen her, but I've seen her partner, Rachel Thomas. I was on a panel with Rachel then 6 months after that again. So you can see, Lean In has been amazing for my own personal development and career. And Rachel is the CEO now of Lean In. Brilliant. So, and yes, I do see Rachel. She comes on to like a quarterly meeting for her Lean In leaders, and we get to chat with her, and she's very present and, still very much involved and wanting to see the growth of it. So in Uri, we are now up to 450 members.
That's amazing.
That's all through word of mouth. Now, they're not all, obviously, they don't all turn up for a meeting.
Where do you host these meetings? I was going to say.
And the growth has been phenomenal, and all through COVID, it was just so heartwarming to see our members stepping up and saying, look, I'm an accountant and I know all about the financial assistance. How can I help? Can I take a webinar on this? Gosh. I'm a wellbeing expert. Can I take a webinar on this? So the support while people were at home going through what we were with COVID was amazing. And now we're back face to face, and we're really building up that whole networking feeling of having that tribe that's supporting you. So we're always welcome to new members if anyone's listening as well.
Well, I was going to say, if there is anybody listening, it can be daunting enough when you're thinking, oh gosh, I mightn't know anybody here. I'm sure in Uri though, lots of people know everyone else, but how do you be brave and take that first step?
Yeah, and I hear that from people because I'm always promoting Lean In through all of my roles and all of my hats, and people say, I don't know, I couldn't walk into a room full of women. I'm like, you absolutely can, because we've all been in that boat. You're walking into a room full of the most supportive, friendly women that just know exactly what you're going through, and it's hugely important if you want to grow in your career to have the right network around you. I know that more than anybody else. My tribe of supporters and females I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for them.
And what do you do? Where do you meet at Lean In?
So, like I said, we've just been going back to face-to-face, and we've generally been meeting in the Bank Bar in Uri. We're planning at the minute our International Women's Day. We're just trying to get our keynote speaker, and we want to do an event for that. It's all down to the resources. There's just me and 3 other women on the team that are helping me, and we do what we can within our resources. There's no funding. It's all voluntary. So we tend to meet about 4 to 5 times a month, but you can find us on Facebook and, contact me at any time.
So Lean In has been fabulous, not only for you seeing the benefits in other women who come along and get that support and be part of that network and that circle, but how did it help you then launch your own business and take that step out of the leaving the job?
Yeah, it absolutely was the Kickstarter. It opened my mind then to a whole world outside of the four walls of the public sector, which I was blind to because I was there for so long, and kept myself, talking myself out of it, I suppose, in anything. And so I was mingling and surrounding myself by these inspiring, go-getting women, and I realised, oh my goodness, there is a whole world outside there. And the same women were coming back to me and saying, Nicola, we think you'd make a great coach. And I was like, you don't even know me. It's like me saying to you, Sarah, in 5 years' time, you're going to be an astrophysicist. It's so hard to wrap your head around that. And I was very lucky then through my connections, I was able to get a couple of coaching sessions, which was very new to me because I thought that was just a whole world for chief executives and what have you. And I had the most wonderful coach. And he had dropped in the conversation more times, Nicola, I think you'd be a great coach again. So then COVID hit. And I was left then without my lovely colleagues that I worked with in the building that we had, and I was at home and I was left with the work, and the work was very much not aligned to my values. I know that now. I'm a people person, but I was working in research, working with statistics, and really feeling miserable. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so, I said, if I'm going to do this coaching thing, I'll do it now.
This is the time. This is the universe providing.
Absolutely. And it has done so much more time since that. So that first day of that first training session, that feeling inside of my body was like I had arrived home. It's like I found something that I didn't even know that I was looking for.
So you started to train to become a coach?
Yes.
During that time. And how did you go about that? I mean, start with also explaining, what is coaching? This podcast is sponsored by Granite Legal Services, a niche business and immigration law practice located in the heart of Newry City. Granite Legal Services provides legal advice to both individuals and companies alike across a wide range of industries, from employment, commercial or corporate law matters to immigration law. Granite Legal Services focuses on providing legally sound, practical advice to its clients. To get in touch, visit www.granitelegalservices.co.uk or contact 028 3026 2200.
Well, I suppose if I give you my experience of working with my coach, and I can talk about my own methods and what have you going forward with my own clients, but honestly, if I could phrase it in one line, it's someone holding up a mirror to you to get you to see the reality of who you are and the potential within inside of you. Oh. So we have lots of emotions attached to ourselves, and we tell ourselves lots of stories throughout our lives, which are generally negative and limiting to our potential. So I can't do this, I'm not that type of person, I'm not good at this, or that would never be me, and all those stories that of course I have told myself too. And my coach was able to say, but Nicola, you've done X, Y, and Z. You are this type of person. I see you on the cusp of a runway ready to take off, and all these lovely phrases that really built my self-belief and confidence. And every session was, I suppose, you could say it was feeding my ego, but really feeding my self-belief. And I needed that support. I needed to be able to see myself through someone else's eyes to see, oh, do you know what? Yeah, actually, I think I could do that, or I do have the potential to do those sort of things, and it's the accountability. So, and that's a big part of my role as a coach. Women will come to me, they've probably tried things themselves and have got nowhere, and knowing that they have a session and they have to do the work in between the session, they're coming back to me, and I'm going to be asking them, yes. And they're taking that action that they've talk themselves out of for so long. So the accountability is a huge part of it, and also you are a thinking partner. So the idea behind coaching is that you as an individual have everything inside of you to answer the questions and for you to do whatever you want to do. And my role is to be your thinking partner, not to ask you the deep questions that you would never ask for yourself or wouldn't know to ask for yourself, to open up, to get you to become open-minded. We're quite closed-minded people when it comes to ourselves and our potential. So it's opening up your mind to the possibilities and then helping you take those small steps.
It is incredible when you think about it, and maybe this will resonate with a lot of the listeners today. If you were sitting looking at a page in front of you and you'd needed to write down your strengths and weaknesses, we'd probably go to those weaknesses first of all, wouldn't we? Oh, well, I can't do this and I'm not very good at that and all of those things. What is that about? And is that more so the case with women than men?
Yeah, it's a great question, Sarah. And I suppose generally we are biased to the negative. So we're hardwired to think of the negative, hardwired to think of the worst case scenario. And we're very quick to talk ourselves out of taking action and doing something, thinking of all these lovely reasons why we can't do something. And it's all backed up by the fear, that fear of judgment, what people will think about us. And the other thing then, in suppose particular to women, is that we very much underestimate our achievements, whereby if we're going to compare to men, they quite often overestimate their achievements. So obviously I'm generalising here, but there's lots of research to back up those assumptions as well. So yes, we play small. We've been conditioned to put ourselves at the bottom of our own list. So think of others, put the head down, work hard. We seek approval because we've been educated with a yes and a no answer, right and a wrong. We get that approval, we seek further approval, we're afraid to take risks. Then we like I say, talk ourselves out of things. So there's lots of nuances behind the female gender and why they don't do things as opposed to men.
And being able to make decisions ourselves, but for our own good rather than people pleasing, or because, I make this decision which will be not to take that job because it perhaps wouldn't be good for the family or good for somebody else, or I'll feel guilty. There's so many of those limiting situations or beliefs that we have about ourselves. So coaching then, it's not counselling.
Oh no, absolutely not. So again, it's very much working with you in the present and working towards your future goals.
So if anybody came in and wanted to make an appointment, I'm just thinking if there are any skeptics out there going, well, if I'm going to pay you by the hour, of course you're going to say nice things to me and tell me I'm brilliant. But will I see results? Will I get results?
The thing I like to be very clear about up front whenever people, call me and we have the conversation is, and it's generally women who want to change in their careers, either pivot, grow in their career, move industries, they don't know what they want, and it's a process. I don't have all the answers. That's not my role. All the answers are inside of you, and it depends on the work that you put into it. And I know that sounds like a wee bit of a cop-out, but the best results I see are from the clients that put the work in, and we're not used to actually working cognitively on ourselves and our personal development. We're quite lazy, and so we stick to the things that don't serve us even though we know that they're wrong. So it's hard work. I get you to do a lot of internal work. So by the time a client comes to me, they feel lost in some way or another, whether they've lost their own identity because of all the roles that they play between a mother, a sister, daughter, friend, partner, or whatever it may be, and they're like, I don't even know who I was, but yet when I was 20 years old I wanted to conquer the world. And it's about bringing them back to the core of who they are and what's important to them, and that's work. And then it's work around the clarity work, where your strengths lie, where you get your energy from, what does it feel like when you're in flow and you look up and it's 5 o'clock and you're like, oh my God, where'd that day go? It's finding all those things that you don't take the time to do on your own. So it's not like I would say you're going to say to yourself, this evening I'm just going to pour a glass of wine and go into the room here and work on my values. Okay, everybody give me the hour here. So again, it's back to that accountability to get you to do the work. You answer to me, you move forward, stuff that you will never find the space and time for because your life is so busy.
And you've done that as well on your own coaching journey, and the results have been incredible. And now I would bet that you're not clock watching every day.
I mean, every day I wake up and I say, I get to do X, Y, and Z. And that's that real intrinsic motivation that people need to love their jobs. So every day is so different for me, and I get to meet, again, back to that whole idea of me being a people person and working with people in the public, and the research was so misaligned to that. So I get to meet new people every day. I get to develop relationships. I don't even know what my next month's going to look like. The opportunities are coming fast and furious, and that energy is just aflamed inside of me. Really, I'm so excited for the future and so excited for every day. And in order to help me in my own self-belief, my clients get results.
I was going to say, is there anything you can tell us about without breaching any confidentiality? But what's been, when do you get that? Oh, wow, that's incredible. I just love what I do, because you see the results.
Yeah, literally only yesterday evening, I got a message from one of my clients. We've just had 3 sessions, and she got a very substantial role in a huge public sector body in Northern Ireland. And she sent me like a WhatsApp message, and I couldn't just type a message. I had to get a recorded message, and I was like, oh my God, I'm so excited. They don't know what they're getting in you. They are so lucky to have you. And, we went through that process. She was very experienced, but told herself a lot of stories about what she could do. We worked on her self-belief in terms of acknowledging her achievements, so that she could truly speak up and believe what she was saying, rather than thinking, oh my goodness, I'm a fraud and I shouldn't really be saying this. So it's acknowledging that. That's a big part of knowing, of growing your confidence. Is
and that self-awareness piece, and actually,
yes.
yeah. And had she come to you because she was going to go for this job? Was
No.
this to get her? No. So how did this happen?
So she came to me feeling deflated with the role that she was doing. It wasn't where her strengths were. It wasn't giving her that energy. It was an okay job. Again, from the outside, people would think she had a wonderful job, but she didn't have that fire in her belly for it.
Wasn't challenged.
Not challenged. The challenge is a big thing. And so we started off with, the clarity piece, like I said, who are you? What's important to you? What do you want? And very importantly, what do you not want?
Yes.
Because a lot of women come to me and they've flitted from job to job without actually actively thinking about what they're doing.
Or
And
they feel they should want things.
Yes,
Not
I should.
actually want things.
Yeah, and a lot of times women will come to me and it's not about the salary. It's about the impact and the legacy and the fulfillment. And so that's what we were working on. And in between time, she sent me a message just before Christmas. Nicola, I've seen this job, but I don't know whether I should go for it. And of course, what's my answer?
Go for it.
Oh, thank you. I said, look, put it in. If you get an interview, then we'll start working on, how you're going to show up on the day.
Still progress, even going for the job.
Yes, I said, even if you get an interview you don't want it, that's fine. But, you're practicing this whole self-belief journey. And so she got the interview, and I worked with her over Christmas. And it was interesting because we worked on her confidence for the interview. I didn't help her with any of her responses to the potential questions. It was competency-based. That's her skill, that's her knowledge. But I work with her on her confidence. And people tend to miss that when they're going for interviews. And it is absolutely your that's where you make the differentiation between you and all the equally competent candidates that show up on the day. Your confidence will be your weapon.
So if somebody was perhaps thinking of pushing themselves forward, they could sign up to you. How many sessions would you normally have? Because that was wonderful in 3 sessions to have achieved so much.
Yeah. So, I have I actually have a power hour for confidence for interviews in response to what I was saying. People were coming and saying, Nicola, can you help me with this interview? And I was like, oh, there's a service in this.
That's really good to know. I am going to write that down now. There are people that ask me all the time, do you know anybody who helps with interview prep? So there we go, Nicola McGuinness Coaching.
Well, specifically, it's on your confidence, not on the answers.
No.
And so that is one service, but generally, so I start off with that internal piece, and that's 4 sessions, and that is all around your values and your boundaries and your strengths and your self-belief, very much around that. And sometimes that's enough for people to say, do you know what, Nicola, I've got it. I'm going to take it from here. I've got all the techniques and the tools, and I'm feeling so much more confidence. I'm off, which is brilliant. The second step in is in another 4 sessions, and that's about the external piece. So that's all around developing your personal brand. So creating this lovely, compelling story that you are confident to go out and speak about verbally and online and show up and be visible. And that's a big part of career growth.
That showing up is massive, and I hear that phrase again and again, and being authentic at work and knowing that you can turn up and be who you are. A previous guest actually was talking to me about that very issue, and he was working in an environment very corporate, suited and booted. It wasn't him at all, but he had to play that role to get that job. And yes, that job then led on to something else where he could be outside in nature and wearing his jumper and his jeans, so it was like, I now feel like I'm myself.
Yeah. The authenticity piece is a big thing in your career, and even more so now, we talk about this psychological safety and bringing your whole self to work, and there is no, work is life and life is work. But a big thing that I help clients with is that self-promotion. And that's that being visible and being able to speak about yourself. And back to that whole conditioning, society and conditioning, particularly around women, where we don't like to brag. And we hear phrases growing up like self-praise is no praise. And there's lots of research to support all that both men and women don't like women who are assertive or women who speak up about their accomplishments and achievements. However, equally, there is research out there to show that women who do self-promote are twice as likely to get promoted and grow through their career. So it's finding that authentic balance.
And I just looked at your social media last night, and that was the post. I think it was, self-promotion without feeling
Icky. Yeah.
Icky. That's what it was. Yes, because it's like, whatever, what's everybody going to think of me? This is not me. I feel a little bit false here. And now in the digital age where everybody has a social media presence, and especially those introverted people, they find that really difficult. How do I do that? And this is hard for me. This takes an awful lot of energy.
Yeah, and it's not all about showing up online either. There's other ways to do it, and it is a process that I take my clients through. So you can do things like success journaling, which builds your confidence, which then obviously builds your ability to speak verbally to someone because you believe in what you're saying. You can set little small stretch goals. For example, like you're going into a meeting and you decide, well, I'm going to speak up at this meeting, or I'm going to say, yes, I agree with that, to let your presence be known. Really, there's no such thing as an invisible business owner or an invisible leader. It's part and parcel of the role, but you have to find ways that work for you, and it is a bit of pushing yourself to do it, and it is a bit of I have to do this because this is going to get me X, Y, and Z. Again, it's just back to our conditioning and how we've been made to not speak high of ourselves. And then for females, we're caught in this double bind where we want to be liked. So we want to be part of the tribe. So we don't speak up and we don't get assertive or whatever, speak about our achievements. And then because we're not acknowledged for that. We don't get the recognition. So it's practicing the small things that work for you and setting those stretch goals that push you out of your comfort zone, but are going to serve you in the long run.
So if someone arrives and they're feeling lost or whatever, and you're doing the 4 sessions, which is all about who you are and what do you feel you want to achieve, at what point do you set goals? Is there homework every week?
Yes, there is. And it doesn't have to be weekly sessions. It's all led by the client, how often they want to meet with me. Some are busy, some have big projects coming up, some might find they want more time to do the internal work because it is quite hard. For example, one of the exercises is to note down the negative voice inside your head over a period of a week. So what are the stories you're telling yourself daily? Waking up in the morning, I have to do this and I hate doing this, and that takes work. And you need to get into that kind of habit. You're not used to doing that work on yourself because you're so busy looking after everybody else. So it's led by the client in terms of, but yes, there's homework in between each sessions. And again, it's up to the client to agree to it. I'm not saying you have to do this. I'm offering us, a potential solution to help you move forward. If you want to take it forward, it's up to you.
I mean, I'm asking all these questions. I'm actually completely sold on coaching. I think everybody should have coaching. Everybody, even if it is 4 sessions, because the learning, and I've been through a coaching journey myself and I want more. I just think it's so beneficial. And really, especially if you've got some blocks or barriers or, life can deal all of these curveballs as well. And perhaps you don't feel like the same person as you were before and you just can't put your finger on it. Yeah. Some people will come with very clear, I'm not achieving this or I feel that, but others don't even know what they're feeling.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with you, Sarah. As soon as I finished my own coaching sessions, that was the key point in my mind. I thought everybody in this life needs a coach. And I think that was the motivation then as well, alongside people telling me I should be a coach to do it, because I saw the widespread need for it, particularly in women, very similar to me. I suppose I coach women who were me 5 years ago. That's my ideal client as such. And I remember my own coach saying to me, Nicola, you've got a wonderful story. And I was like, what? I mean, I'm just ordinary. I don't have a story. And it wasn't about the fact that I didn't have a big challenge to overcome or I had some major tragedy. It was in the fact that what I was feeling was so widespread and that people could relate, that affinity.
So relatable.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the normalness actually that made people go, you're speaking to me because I feel like I'm listening to my own story. And that is, I think, what makes you connect so well with your coachees, because it could be quite daunting going in there. And I have said it's not counselling, but you have to dig deep. And it can be quite an emotional journey too.
I had a client one time, and she said to me, Nicola, I've been to CBT practitioners, I've been to counsellors, and no way whatsoever. They're hugely, hugely important. She said to me, I've dug so deep here that no one has ever asked me those questions, and I've got it all out. And then we were able to take action on that. But there is, I suppose, back to an earlier point I was trying to make, in that it is a journey, and people think that I'm going to help them find a wonderful job. That's not my role. My role is to find out who you are so that you can make the decisions and the actions for you to find that wonderful job.
Yes, you don't have a magic wand. You just, as you say beautifully at the start, you're holding that mirror up to the person, and you very quickly, can you very quickly get the measure of someone? I mean, you've obviously been trained to do that, to see the type of person and all the different personality types that you can meet.
Yeah, what I noticed was, people will generally, we have a 15-minute clarity call as night to start off the thing and to see whether the relationship will work. I might not be the coach for you, or they might not be the ideal client for me, so that's very important. But clients generally come to me and they think they're the only ones facing that issue. And it's not until either you join a network or you start talking about it and talking to me that I can tell them they're not, and that it is so common, and there's absolutely hope and so much that they can do in order to move them from that feeling of being stuck. And often people will try to do things on their own, but we have too much emotion attached to where we are. And I am a third party who can ask those questions without the emotion attached to it, to get us to think and to get us to answer, and for them to give me an answer instead of sitting there and saying, no, yes, don't know.
And then the other thing with coaching I found was the difference between what's real and what's perceived. I think this, and this is the way it is, and I know that if I do that, this will happen. And, well, hold on. Has that ever happened? Is that real? What evidence do you have of any of that? Nothing.
Yeah, that's the big, big part of it, is applying perspective and questioning your assumptions about yourself and the situation. Huge part of it. And that's the closed-mindedness of it. They're coming to me closed-minded, and I ask the question that opens their mind. And so the next question is, so what action can you take? Or what small thing can you do to move yourself from that? And that's when they start thinking, oh yeah, well, I can do this and this and this. And slowly but surely they're getting there.
Can you coach yourself? Are there tips you can give to people, or is it always better to have a conversation?
I do try and coach my community in terms of, I send out like a weekly newsletter, and I'll ask a particular coaching questions, and I'll say, go to a room and write the answer to this down. Whether they do or not's another thing. Again, it's back to that whole accountability and what's important to them at that time. I find I'm probably my own worst client, and sometimes because I'm a coach, it doesn't mean that I've got it all together. This is a journey, and I'm growing as well and learning. And my coachees teach me a lot as well. And so I can get into that, deep hole of self-doubt and negativity. What helps me is reminding myself, obviously, of the tools that I have in my tool belt, but also my community. I mean, because I'm in this coaching environment, I'm surrounded by colleagues who are coaches, and I have some really close friends that I can send a message and say, hey, this is what happened, I'm feeling this, and they say, Nicola, you know what you have to do.
You know it all.
Yeah.
Applying it.
Yes.
But sometimes when we just spiral a little, don't we? And we can, you know it all, but you're just not hearing it that day or not feeling it that day. What would you say to people if they were in that mindset? How do you get yourself back on track? Is there one question you can ask yourself?
Oh, I didn't know you were going to ask this, and I love it. So yes, look, it's okay to feel our feelings. We obviously will, and it's okay to get into that deep area, but know that you can wallow in it and feel it for a certain amount of time, and then know you have the tools to get out of it. The one question that I ask my clients to try and remember when they're in that situation is, what can I control? What is within my control? So something has happened at work, and you are ruminating and you're playing it over and over in your head, and you're getting worried about it, and you're thinking the worst case scenario. What is within your control? So it's very much, the outcome of it. This has happened. I can't live in the past anymore. So what action can I take to control how I'm feeling, so I can stop thinking about it for a start, because I have no control over what's going to happen from here. I can go for a walk, step away from the situation. There's lots of techniques, But that question, even writing that question down,
Yeah.
takes you away from the thinking in your head.
And there are certain things you can't control, like the pandemic, and a lot of people
Yes.
struggled during that. There was nothing, but there were certain things you could do within your own little bubble at the time, or that you could just move forward ever so slightly to control something to make it better.
Absolutely. In the pandemic, you could see people were thinking, oh, look, they're not isolating and they're not wearing their mask. And we can get very hung up on, things that are out of your control. But what can you do about the situation? Well, maybe you can isolate and you can wear your mask. You cannot control other people.
The judging, that was massive, wasn't it? Oh, it's so interesting talking to you about the coaching. But let's talk to you about, before we finish up today, about running the business. How has it been going from the public sector, where you were there forever and a day, to now running your own business, to being self-employed? I know you're a mum of 4 children, very busy, I'm sure, but what's your work-life balance like?
Ooh, that's a good question, and it's better because I was actually running my business and maintaining my full-time job.
You were doing the two at the same time.
And it got to the stage where, look, I couldn't do it. I was silly hours in the morning, late at night, weekends, and I really wasn't present for the children in my home life, and the guilt that came with that as well.
But it allowed you to build that up to see, have you got something worth, doing? So you didn't give up the job straight away. You ran the two side by side.
Yes. So it wasn't a bad move in any way, shape or form. And it gave me the confidence, to grow my own expertise, I suppose. But sooner or later that decision had to be made. And it was probably, I'm going to be 100% honest here, the most difficult conversation I've ever had to have with my husband. I was obviously putting everything at risk. We're a 2-income family, mortgage, all the things that come with having 4 children. And I was going from whatever salary to 0, basically. So an unbelievably huge risk. And as females, we're very risk averse, and we're the logical ones. And, I could never foresee myself as being an entrepreneur. I was like, I do my 9-to-5 job. I like the security of it. I like being told what to do. I like doing my job and closing off for the day. So this whole entrepreneurial idea was like, that's for my brother. He had very early sparks of being an entrepreneur from a young age, and that's what he does, and this is what I do.
Peter McCall, who was with Pearlie, he's also been a former guest on this. Yes, he's definitely an entrepreneur.
So you could see, that's who he is and that's who I was. So to even get my mind to jump that far ahead, that right, you're going to be an entrepreneur here. You're going to be your own boss. And
even about the language that you were using about yourself, because you're talking to me now and I'm listening with a coaching head on and thinking, there's somebody who says, I have to talk to my husband because I'm going to do this and this will, effectively change our family. And yet maybe if he was coming to you and saying, I want to be an entrepreneur, it probably would have been the same conversation, but would people have been as likely to judge him as you?
Yeah, Sarah, honestly, and of course I was thinking, what am I doing to the family? The kids, my responsibilities for this, I'll have to change this, I'll have to do that. All of those things went through my head, but very likely would not have went through my husband's head if he had made that decision.
How did he greet the news?
Yeah, it wasn't easy for him to accept that, because ultimately we were setting in terms of income, we were probably setting ourselves back maybe 20 years, removing an income from the family. And we decided we'd give it a year. Mm-hmm. But I knew in my head.
Could you have gone back? Was there a revolving door?
I could have taken a career break. That decision was made in my mind. There was no going back. And also what I told myself was, if this didn't work, I could get a job anywhere. I could work anywhere,
Of course you could.
But I also told myself, this will be a success. And I had to walk the talk, Sarah. I was working with women and telling them to take those risks. And so I had to be that, I had to have that ultimate test and self-belief in myself.
So honestly, how has it gone?
Absolutely amazing in terms of the energy and the opportunities. But I'm not going to, there was bad days where I didn't even know where my next paycheck was coming from, or I didn't have any work, or that question,
so
what have I done?
Regular salary coming in every month?
No, and that was a big
cash
learning
flow.
point. Exactly, that's the key, the cash flow and the mindset. And that's why I needed the support of my partner and my husband and my tribe around me to help me through those difficult mindset days. And I'm fairly good with money, I can manage that away, but and also walking the talk in terms of self-promotion. So those months that I didn't have work, I was thinking, what can I do? Who do I know? Who can I contact? And so I worked my network in a way that women often are averse to doing because they don't like asking people for help or they feel they're imposing. And I was like, nope, I just got to do it.
450 customers right there, potentially.
Yeah.
Your lean in network.
Yeah. Well, I tend not to mix, because that's one side of me and the other. And of course, there's an overlap. And I have a great network because of that, to be fair. My name's fairly well known.
So, given you've been all about self-promotion today, I'm going to get you to talk the talk now and walk the walk. Tell us, if somebody's listening to this now and would like to consider coaching, why they should pick up the phone.
Well, I'm going to maybe tell you a story about me and how that relates. And hopefully, again, in terms of the widespread feeling within people, is my reason for changing careers and going into coaching was this huge fear of regret. This idea that looking back on my retirement, why did you not do what you should have done? And so for me, that fear of regret was always bigger than the fear of not trying. And so for people who are feeling stuck and they're undecided about going to a coach, and this probably sounds a bit corny, but it is absolutely an investment in you that you wouldn't even think twice of in buying those £160 runners for the child. That is going to pay off in the long run. Every minute that you're wasting staying where you are unfulfilled, you are time's going to pass anyway, whether you do something about your career or not. So it's ultimately, how important is it to you that you get this life, this kind of second act of being joyful and fulfilled and making an impact and leaving a legacy. If that's important to you, then it's time to take action and to call in the experts.
Absolutely. And let's talk bottom line as well, though. Can you make a living?
Well, I have been able to, I suppose, keep our heads above water in terms of giving up that salary and, maintaining the income. But I have big ambitions and I want to grow. And it's absolutely not about the money for me. It's about seeing this widespread issue and helping women live a joyful life. But obviously, this lovely sidebar of income will help do that.
And what's next for you then? What are the plans?
So in the last half of last year, I got very much into leadership training. So I'm working with a lot of corporates and helping them work with their teams and coaching and also personal branding and working with their female talent as well as the whole of the organisation. And I want to do more collaboration, Sarah. There's lots of other female entrepreneurs out there whose work is very much aligned to mine. So if we did an event and a woman rocks up, they're going to get the most out of their day they could possibly get. I love working with other female entrepreneurs, that our work is so aligned to each other.
Now, the purpose of this podcast is to inspire existing business owners and ambitious entrepreneurs to grow their business by offering insight into the success of businesses, such as Nicola McGuinness Coaching. What advice then, Nicola, would you give to people who may have a business idea but have no idea where to begin or are unsure as to whether the risk is worth taking? I think I know the answer to this one.
Yeah, we did. We talked about the risk, and I suppose back to that phrase of, make your fear of not trying bigger than your fear of regret. And don't go it alone. So build up your network even now before you take that step. Go out, join the likes of Lean In, join Women in Business, start getting visible, start, working on your LinkedIn profile, getting your name out there. I remember when I literally started my business the day after I finished the training. I wasn't even fully qualified, but I set up my website, set up my social media. I remember getting 25 likes in the first up to 12 o'clock that day, and I was so excited, to celebrate that little small success. It's all about the small successes. So what are the small steps you can take that are maybe not as risky as going the whole hog and leaving your job, and then getting a mentor is hugely important. Don't go it alone. Have the people there to support you.
Nicola McGuinness, thank you so much for being a guest on the Public Eye podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today and for helping all of us think a little differently about ourselves going forward. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll see you again for the next episode of the Public Eye podcast. This podcast was recorded in Granite Podcast Studio. Interested in starting up your own podcast but don't know how? Granite Podcast Studio can help. Record your podcast in our state-of-the-art studio, which is based in the heart of Newry City. Our studio has cutting-edge and user-friendly technology and can seat up to 4 people. We also provide an editing service, For our team using your guidance and editing notes to provide you with a flawless finished product, leaving your listeners wanting more. For more information on how you can get started, visit www.granitepodcaststudio.com.